Hello and welcome back to my YouTube channel. In today's video, I'll be doing a quick overview of what my reading looked like in 2023 with some stats. I am a numbers girl. I love seeing data and got the idea to do this when people started sharing their Spotify Wrapped. So I thought this would be a good video for me to look back at, but also a condensed way for viewers to get to know me as a reader and see if there's any genre or medium here that interests you. Data will also help me reflect on my reading for the year and see if there are any changes I want to make in 2024. I have a pretty good idea what my most read genre was, but it's still nice to have data, and sometimes you might even get surprised by the results. I wasn't, but that could happen. I compiled all my reading data in a digital format in the last week of 2023. I would love to get back to physical journaling, but God knows my wallet cannot handle another money sinking obsession, so digital tracking it is. I'll start with an overview of the year. I read 428 books, which sounds like a lot, but do not be alarmed. That number includes a lot of volumes of manga, as well as some books I did not finish. I tried to include all the webtoons I read, but that was pretty hard because a lot of them are ongoing, so I'll be going over them separately. I didn't actually meet my reading goal, which was to read 75 books, but I did meet the smaller goal, or more of a habit really, to read every day, and I've done so for the past 2 years. Reading 75 books wasn't a goal I actively worked towards. I was more focused on the action of reading every day, and I just had fun with my reading, which was a feeling I'd lost at some point, so that was nice. And to break down what I read some more, I have these nice pie charts. The first one shows what I read. I did mention that I read a lot of manga, so as you can see, 324 of my total 428 was manga, and that made up 75.7% of what I read. I read 71 books, which was 16.6% of what I read, 29 volumes of manhwa that I could count, which accounted for 6.8%, and then 4 volumes of manhua that made up a pretty negligible amount percentage-wise. I was fully in my weeb era in 2023. It felt like going back to my roots. 2022 was the year of trashy book talk romances. They had their time in the limelight, but I was mostly over it, and I just wanted to go back to my regular schmegular weeb shit, so I did. The pie chart to the right shows the format of everything I read. I read 137 physical books, 286 ebooks, which includes manga and manhwa I read online, and I listened to 5 audiobooks. Moving to the bottom right, I have shown the data for what I owned. 139 of what I read were books I own. 117 were with my Kindle Unlimited subscription. 166 were online, and 6 were borrowed from the library. Now, the last chart might seem random, but it's not. I am a reader who finds comfort in reading things I already know I would enjoy, aka things I've read and loved before, and that made up 108 of my total 428. 312 were books I read for the first time, and I did not finish 8 books, which I will go over some more later. And to break down what I read by genre, starting with books, my most read genre was danmei, and that made up 26 of the 71 books I read. I totally expected that. 20 were LGBTQ plus romance novels, 10 were romance, 6 were nonfiction, 4 were literary fiction, and then I have 5 genres in which I read just 1 book each, and those were thriller, fiction, historical fiction, memoir, and poetry. I also have a pie chart that shows what I read for the first time and what I didn't finish. I've replicated much of the same information on the next page for manga, manhwa, and manhua. For manga, I've split those into 4 major demographics and BL. I read 200 volumes of shoujo manga. Again, I expected that. 31 shonen manga, 19 seinen manga, 10 josei manga, and 64 BL or yaoi manga. For manhwa, I read 16 BL manhwas and 13 romance manhwas. All the manhwa I read were BL or danmei, whatever you want to call it, and I do have those nice pie charts that show what I read for the first time and reread as well. That is all for the overview of the year, and now I'll briefly go over what my reading looked like month to month. I'll spend a little more time on January just to explain the setup before going over the rest of them. I did all of this in Canva, by the way, in case you're curious. I've added the covers of everything I read, and I have some tags at the bottom of the page that I just thought would be nice to have. I read only books in January, and I was trying to carry over the trend of reading trashy book talk romances from 2022. That was a fail. They were both so terrible that I did not finish either one of them. This marked the beginning of a short reading slump, and I swore off book talk recommendations. I tried switching gears in February and started making my way through the Goodreads Choice Award winners. I made it through 2 of them, but I was already experiencing a reading slump at this point, so I defaulted to reading books I enjoyed in the past in March in hopes that it would reset my brain and get me out of my reading slump. That didn't completely do it, but what did manage to get me out of my reading slump was reading a lot of shoujo manga in April. That was the point where I started reading more manga and went back to my roots. It was fun to test the waters of book talk for a while, but ultimately, this is me. I continued that trend in May, and I must be a sadist or something because I decided that I didn't have enough of book talk apparently and read all 3 books in the 𝕤𝕚𝕟𝕚 series in May. Regrets. I wish I could get my time back. I did, however, balance that regret by reading some danmei novels. The first one I read in 2023 was The Husky and His White Cat Shizen, aka 𝕤𝕚𝕚𝕚. And oh my god, what a banger to start the year with. I loved the first 2 books so much that I read the rest of the entire series online. I did not count what I read online though, since they are getting physical releases and I plan to read those as well. I got back on track in June, kicked book talk to the curb, and just focused on reading what I enjoyed, which I took a little too far in July. I read 93 volumes of manga and 1 book. It almost feels like I read that 1 book to feel better about myself, but I did enjoy it, so it worked. August was a very regular month. The only thing worth mentioning is that I started reading the manhua for global examination, but then it got licensed shortly after, so I dropped it and decided to wait for the physical releases. In September, I read all 7 of the Heaven Official's Blessing series that had been released at that point, and 3 other books in addition to 16 volumes of manga and 16 volumes of manhua. That month felt very balanced and I was very proud of myself. Things started to slow down a little bit as I approached the final quarter of the year. Work got busy, the world took another terrible turn, and I wasn't unaffected. I still read, but a lot of things just felt slow. I'm guessing the weather probably played a part in that as well. November was also a pretty balanced month. I didn't overload myself with too much, not that I could at the time anyways, but I enjoyed a lot of what I read, and that brings me to December. The slowest month of the 3 months in the last quarter because of the holidays, and I was working on getting everything I read together as well. I read the final volume of Heaven Official's Blessing, which was bittersweet, and if you are familiar with my danmei content, you will notice that I finally read Scum Villain. I did get in the 3 books that cover the main story in December, and that video should be going up the week after this one does. That was what my reading looked like throughout the year, and I have a bar graph that just shows my reading volume month to month. You can see that the first quarter was pretty slow and things started to pick up in April. This is just a nice way to see my reading volume throughout the year on 1 page. I have some additional tabs to the right that I wanted to go over, starting with Webtoons, and I've separated those into ongoing series that I was following pretty consistently and completed series. I tried really hard to track down all the Webtoons that I read. I'm sure some didn't make it in, but this should be most of them. For ongoing series, I have Work-Life Balance, which is a sequel for On or Off that I read in 2023 as well. I also have The Broken Ring, This Marriage Will Fail Anyway, The Pizza Delivery Man, and The Goat Palace. I'm imagining someone who is not familiar with Webtoons hearing these titles and just going, what the fuck, but you learn to stop caring about them. Going back to the ongoing series, there's Night Song, Shot Line, That Sex Apparition, I Thought My Time Was Up, Stay With Me. That's the name of the series, but yes, Stay With Me. I'm probably going to drop that one. My In-Laws Are Obsessed With Me, one of my favorites in 2023. I tried reading The Villainess is a Marionette again, and it had so much potential that just went down the drain. I am so disappointed in how the plot was handled, especially after the promo it got featuring freaking Lee Soo-hyuk, Cha Nu, and Han So-hee. I digress. The other ones are Sister, I Am the Queen in This Life, and Under the Oak Tree. On the next page, I have The Remarried Empress and Wolf in the House. There is a spin-off story that started in, I believe it was November of 2023 for Wolf in the House. I'm probably going to read the entire series again this year because it's been a while since I read it. For completed series that I reread because I loved them, I have Positively Yours, The New Employee, Unintentional Love Story, Daytime Star, and BJ Alex. Completed series that I read for the first time: Who's Your Daddy, On or Off, See You in My 19th Life, Dahae Dream, Sex Exercise, My Way with You, My Bias Appeared, Love is Fantasy, The Queen. This one is a spin-off of Love is an Illusion. Semantic Error did get completed in 2023. Again. And the last three are series that got completed in 2023, but I still need to finish. And those are My Reason to Die, Painter of the Night, and Limited Run. Since I went over ongoing webtoon, I wanted to go over ongoing manga that I was reading as well. I tried to keep them all on one page. The first two series are two that I'm likely going to drop, and those are Jujutsu Kaisen and Kagurabachi. The other ones are The Guy She Was Interested In Wasn't a Guy at All, Usokon Rose. I like this series more than the original, Fake Marriage. Shujinko Nikki, this one is definitely one of my ongoing faves. Kaoru Hana wa Rin to Saku, this is getting printed in English this year. Musaru Kurai no Ai wo Ageru. How I Met My Soulmate, this started getting printed in English last month. Kisarazu-kun no XX ga mitai. My Love Story with Yamada-kun at level 999, also getting printed in English this year. In the Clear Moonlit Dusk, which is currently on hiatus, and Foti Made Nishitai Ten no Koto. The next tab is the DNF or Did Not Finish tab. 2023 was the year I learned to value my time and stop reading things I wasn't enjoying. I do give them a chance and read about 25 to 30%, and for manga, I read at least one volume. 3 of my DNFs were books and the rest of them were manga. 2 of the 3 books were book talk books, and I did mention them a little bit earlier. The last one was a nonfiction book that I just wasn't vibing with. Everything else was manga, most of which I tried only because they were available on Kindle Unlimited. I have 2 series by Yuki Shiwasu here, Takane and Hana and Taman's B-side. I'll most likely be picking up Takane and Hana again because I enjoyed the first volume, but I just couldn't get into Taman's B-side. Now for the favorites tab, I've picked out a few topics, starting with quotes and characters. There were a lot of amazing quotes I read during the year, but I went with the ones I could recall off the top of my head. The first 2 are from the same book, and I'll just go ahead and read them out. The first one is from Conversations on Love. As I grew older, I learned that the expectation that someone will save you from who you are or from what you have or don't have is a fallacy. Expecting someone to fill in a hole that's within you, that's expecting too much of any one person. That's not your friend's job or your partner's job. That is your job. The second one, also from the same book, goes, no one really wants to be idealized. We want to be seen and accepted and forgiven, and to know that we can be ourselves in our less edifying moments. Which kind of ties into the third one from the danmei series, Heaven Official's Blessing. This specific quote is from the 4th book and one that the fandom is extremely familiar with. The one standing in infinite glory is you. The one fallen from grace is also you. What matters is you and not the state of you. Such a beautiful quote. And the last one is from the book Cost by Isabel Wilkerson. She's using an old house as an analogy to describe the caste system in America. Choose not to look, however, at your own peril. The owner of an old house knows that whatever you are ignoring will never go away. Whatever is lurking will fester whether you choose to look or not. Ignorance is no protection from the consequences of inaction. Whatever you are wishing away will gnaw at you until you gather the courage to face what you would rather not see. For my favorite characters in 2023, I have Iwakura Mitsumi from the anime and manga Skip and Loafer. I mostly watched the anime, and this is a series I definitely want to read this year, but I did read the first volume, and her character is just as awesome on paper as she is on screen. It's easy to try to paint her as a naive country girl, and she is a bit naive, but she has such strong core values and an innate kindness and sense of self that make her an amazing character. And because I couldn't pick just one, I've separated my book pick from my manga pick, and that will be the Crown Prince of Xianle, Xielian from the danmei series Heaven Official's Blessing. I wish I had all the vocabulary to describe why I love Xielian as a character so much, but I've sat with it for days, and all I can cough up is I just love him. He is such an interesting and complex character, and I would love to pick apart the intricacies of what makes him such a great character someday. For my favorite ending, I initially put Attack on Titan to be funny because I thought I didn't have one, but just when I thought nothing was satisfying enough to be chosen as a favorite, I remember the ending of the yaoi manga one-shot Snow Fairy, and I loved it, so I picked that one. For books, it will be TGCF. I loved the legend that ended the main story, and that will occupy space in my head rent-free for years to come. Favorite moment is also from TGCF and ties into the quotes I mentioned earlier. The reason why a lot of people love Hua Chong is because his love for Xielian is free of conditions, or at least I think so. Xielian was a character who unfortunately had a lot of expectations placed on him. He was idealized, and when he didn't meet those expectations, it changed the way people viewed him, which also affected the way he viewed himself. But then you have this person who is telling him that I don't care about any of those things. Your existence is enough for me. And yes, that's a really nice thing to say, but it carries way more weight when you realize that Hua Chong was with Xielian every step of the way, through the good and the bad, and his feelings never wavered. They only grew stronger. I can keep going, but I'll stop talking now. Favorite couple, another danmei series. My favorite couple was Yan Xiaohan and Fu Shen from Golden Terrace. I'll dial back my monologue for this one since I'll get to talk about it some more on the next page. Favorite twist? I didn't really read anything that had thrilling and unexpected twists, but I have selected The Silent Patient because I didn't see that twist coming. If you know, you know. Favorite writing? What you're looking for is in the library. It was a really easy book to read and the words flowed really well. Favorite setting and concept both go to Little Mushroom. The world building as well as the sci-fi post-apocalyptic concept were very well done in the series, and I think the manhua has done great things for visualizing the world the story is set in, so I added some shots from it. And finally, before I go over my goals for 2024, I have a 3x3 of my favorite reads from 2023. The first two are books. My favorite danmei series was Golden Terrace, and here is where I talk about it some more. The plot was not anything complicated or mind-blowing, and the book doesn't pretend to be something it's not. The political aspect did not keep you guessing, and you immediately knew what you were getting into, which makes for a very simple plot, but that simplicity was executed to perfection, and I loved it. For non-danmei, my favorite was Cast. I've selected my favorite manga series by demographic and yaoi. For josei, I picked Watakoi, even though it was a reread. I just love it that much. For seinen, I picked a side character's love story. For shonen, I have Kaoru Hana wa Rin Tosaku. For shoujo series, my love mix-up, and for yaoi, I have Fangs. The other two are Webtoons, and I picked one for BL and one for romance as well. My favorite ongoing BL is The Pizza Delivery Man and the Gold Palace. For a completed series, it's Unintentional Love Story. That was another reread. And for ongoing romance, I have The Broken Ring, This Marriage Will Fail Anyway, and for a completed one, Daytime Star, which was also a reread. And now for the final section of this video. I'll briefly go over my reading goals for 2024. These are not meant to be super strict, and they're just results I would like to get from reading every day, which is the main goal. I'm still shooting for 75 books this year. I do want to try to read more nonfiction, but overall, I want to have fun with what I read because looking back on my reading last year, it was a lot of fun and I loved that. I'll see if I can incorporate more audiobooks and maybe some reading challenges. I didn't do a lot of reading challenges in 2023, but I do have some in mind for 2024. There are also some completed series I started in 2023 that I would like to finish this year. I want to engage more critically with what I read and, if possible, review or rate everything. That one's going to be a bit tough, but I'll try. Lastly, I would like to keep DNFing books that I'm not enjoying. For things I want to do less of, overconsumption. It is so easy to fall into the trap of overconsumption if you consume a lot of bookish content, but I want to focus on only buying what I love and making use of the library a lot more. I also want to try to read 60% of my physical library, but that's pretty much it. I'm keeping it somewhat simple for now and not being overly rigid, but I'll build on that as the year goes on. I like to think of 2023 as the year I rekindled my love for reading. I never really fell out of love with it, but a lot of it just started to feel like muscle memory and something I did just because I was used to it. What, however, changed in 2023 is I started to share my love for reading through content creation. Interacting with readers who share similar interests helped me fall in love with reading again. So here's to another great year of reading, and whatever day you find yourself watching this, make it a great one, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!